Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Johngy or Else podcast. I, of course, am Who Else, the Tommy Else. And with me, as always, coming to us from Skokie, Illinois, Johngy.com, the man on the beat, Mr. Jonathan Azriel Robleski.
I always wait to see you. I'm good. How are you, sir?
I'm good. It's a really nice day out. Not to make just like, small talk, but I got up and I went outside and was going to go to the gym and got hit with this like blast of cool air and was like, whoa. And went out and got out on a walk instead. I was like, I gotta, these days are few, as you know.
It is nice
around here. Fall lasts for about 2.5 weeks, and then it's winter in late October. So you get a nice day like this, you got to get out. You go running at all today?
I know. Yesterday I ran. I only intended to run yesterday, like a quick run in late afternoon. I intended to run like a couple miles and then run long today, and I ended up running 8 miles yesterday.
Man,
so I'm not doing any today. I might just do like a little sprinting outside, but that's about it.
I would have liked to have gotten out on my bike, but I've got this poison ivy on the back of my right hand, and it's bouncing around and all that, aggravates it. And plus, if it gets hot, just from your blood flow and everything, sweat, yeah, it's going to be wildly uncomfortable. Which is it's a shame. Typically, it's like 2 to 3 weeks. I don't know if you remember a few years back when I had it really bad on my legs. And yes. that was a living hell. And I went down to St. Louis with our friend Jesse, and we had the plans set for so long, and I just, and Jesse really likes to walk around and see the sights and everything, which I would normally be all about, but it was like, it went all the way down to my ankles. So inside my shoes, it was just like every step I took just was absolute hell. And then I also have my legs covered in calamine lotion, and I look like an invalid or something. I mean, it's not an attractive.
You were a mess.
Yeah, it was bad. Now this is not nearly as bad. It's just like on the back of my hand. I don't know where the hell I got it. I don't know where I got it the last time I got it, but I don't brush up against anything when I'm on my rides or I'm out on my walks or anything like that. So I don't know.
Well, you said you thought you might have had it when you were in Michigan, but that seems too far.
That's the problem. I mean, that seems like the natural place where I would have been, because I was kayaking in the lake, and I was there were a lot of bushes and stuff around where my car was, and I was in and out of there a lot. So, but the timing of it seems too late. So anyway, enough about my poison ivy. You actually had a topic and an idea of something you wanted. You brought something to the table today. And so if you want to explain to everybody what your concept for this episode is here.
Well, as people may or may not know, we had a previous podcast where we were reliving your journey through Resistance Pro from beginning to pretty much the end. We never really finished it quite to the end. And while we were doing it, we collected a bunch of questions from our listeners or our viewers, depending. And we never got to answering all those questions. So I went back to all my notes, and I have all the questions ready. Whenever you're ready, we could dive into it.
Right on. As a sidebar, I am planning on getting all of those episodes up on the Johngy URL's YouTube page. It is definitely going to take some time because there are over 50 of them, I think. And they'll be audio only, but I decided that we'll archive them there. And you never know, maybe we'll go back and actually break down the last, there's probably another good 10 episodes that would finish it off, but we were doing that. And then I had the idea for this show. I felt that John had earned his stripes after so long, that we should put both names on the marquee, and we can talk about things other than something as specific as a very specific professional wrestling company in Chicago and my specific journey through it. So yeah, so go ahead, shoot. What do you got?
Well, we did for the most part tell probably about 90%, if not more, of the tale of Tommy and
Yeah,
Resistance
I mean,
Pro.
we got the bulk of it in there, which is why I didn't feel so bad about, and it kind of it's not the happiest of endings either. So I wasn't like racing to get
Well,
through
yeah,
it.
the ending kind of went out with a whimper, more so from the company's end than your end. But yeah.
Yeah, but I'd still be interested in finishing that off. Once we get the archive up there, then we'll maybe we'll look at breaking down just the last part of the whole thing, because we were pretty close to the end. We
Yeah.
were pretty close. So, all right, let's hear it. What do you got?
All right. For the most part, these are going to be somewhat chronological order.
Okay.
The first question is when you went to the audition, the original audition, did you go to that to meet Billy, to join a wrestling company, or a combination of both? And where would the percentage be?
So I didn't really know. I knew Billy would be there, and I knew he was one of the judges. As far as any level of interaction with him, I had no expectation at all. And in fact, I had very little. Well, that's not true. I went. I've told the story before, but I was actually having a very just an absolute horrible day, and I had every reason to not go to that audition. There was a snowstorm that night. It was February, I think, in Chicago. 290 was just a wasteland. There was nobody driving on 290, and if you live in Chicago, there's traffic on 290 at 3 a.m. on a Wednesday. So, I mean, the weather was that bad, and I think I was so upset from the day that, because I had been planning on going, but I think being as upset as I was about the whole thing is actually what drove me to just get I'm just going to get in the car and I'm just going to go out there and just go do this, and who the hell cares what happens? It'll be something I can say, something I did, um, and I didn't know what we would be doing. I didn't, I dressed sort of like as what I would consider, the best wrestling gear type of thing I could put together. And the thing that they had put out, the invitation, was that they were looking to have someone be a manager for a show. So so I'm not thinking about getting into wrestling as a career in any sense at this point. This is all like, if somehow I get through this and go all the way, the big prize is that you get on a show, and then that's it. And then you say goodbye and you go back to your regular life, and that's the end of the story. So at the time, that was the biggest thing that I was going to maybe get out of it. I knew Billy was one of the judges, but I didn't know that he would be moderating the whole thing. And so basically the way it worked was they went one person at a time and brought them up in front of a panel, which was Billy, Jacques and Gabe Barron, and Raven. And Billy just basically asked, a bunch of general questions. Where are you from? What do you do? Who are your favorite wrestlers? And it was wild because, he's sitting behind a table. I mean, I haven't shaken his hand or gotten to really officially say hello and meet him or anything. And here I am, and I'm suddenly in this conversation with Billy, and very, very surreal. But he was so super nice and made you feel super comfortable. I wasn't nervous. I just, it's one of the few things where it was something really cool, where I was enjoying it in the moment because I had no expectations. I had nothing to lose. As far as I was concerned, I was standing there talking to Billy. I already had my story and could go home. I was good. And then they had me, because it was looking for a manager position. They had a heel and a face wrestler there to try to do a promo with and put them over for a supposed match. The heel was the Sheik, and the face was Stephen Walters. No, that wasn't Stephen Walters. Is that what he was called? The hell was his name?
Stephen Walters, yeah.
It was Stephen Walters. He's Dash Wilder now, or whatever. I don't know what he is now. Now, being new to the indie scene, I didn't really know either of these guys. And so to cut a promo with no background on the person that you're talking about, I just had to speak very generally about them, you know, and just kind of throw out some just general wrestling stuff that would make them sound like they were a good wrestler, you know, their derive their personality, things like that, you know. Um, I had done the one with Walters, and that went fine. They seemed to like that. And then I did the one with the Sheik as a heel, and Billy and Raven gave me a couple of notes on it, and then had me do it again. And then that was it. And they said, all right, sounds good. Thanks a lot. You know, and then after that, I mean, I was the second person up. So after that, the rest of the night was me watching. There was like maybe 10 people there, I think, actually, you know, showing up for this thing. And it was watching them all go through the same thing and everything. But it was like the whole room was in on the whole thing. It was like we were all laughing at the same time, and you know, and people, Billy was pretty funny and was telling jokes, and you know, it was just a very lighthearted, fun affair. And I'll tell you something, as bad as I felt going into that night, man, I felt great going home. And after I had, you know, when we were done and we were wrapping up, when I was leaving, I went up to Billy. I saw an opportunity, like I didn't know if it was wrong to go up and try to talk to him or anything, but I was like, I will most likely never see this guy 10 feet away from me ever again. So I went up to Billy and I just told him, I said, thank you for tonight. This was actually a lot of fun, and I appreciate, you know, the opportunity and everything. But, you know, I would not be happy with myself if I didn't say thank you for just all of the music and everything that you've done, because I have been heavily inspired by him, both, you know, not just in music, but in other ways. He's a big reason that I started writing music. He's a big reason why some of my music sounded the way it did at certain times and stuff like that. You know, I just, and here I had a chance to thank the guy and everything. And he said, well, you know, I appreciate that and everything. And then he was like, yeah, I think you did a really good job tonight. You know, I still got to talk to the other guys, but I think we might have something for you. And I was not expecting that. But even with that said, I still went home thinking I'm never hearing from these people again. So, so to answer the question, I guess I hope that answers the question, really. I mean, like I wasn't really there, you know, just trying to like get a moment with Billy. It worked out that way. And like I said, even if that hadn't happened, and all I had was the conversation I had with him in the audition, I would have been still just as happy. It was awesome.
Well, you actually answered 1.5 of the next questions. The one question was going to be, did everyone get to see everybody else audition? You said yes.
Yeah.
And did you fanboy at all? You kind of, with all due respect, you kind of did a respectful fanboy, but you did not ask for a photo. Was it tempting to ask for a photo?
No, I felt like I was already overstepping my bounds by talking to him in the first place. So, no, I didn't ask for any autograph or a photo or anything like that. I didn't have the nerve to do that at that point. So
once in a lifetime opportunity, though, it had to be tempting.
Sure. You know, it's funny because I don't remember even thinking about it, because I didn't even think I would, you know, it was like when it was over, he was just standing around like with everybody. It wasn't like he like went off to some secluded area or something like that. He was just out in the open and he was there. I wasn't counting on that. And I just, you know, I went with this, like, it happened in like 2 seconds in my head, this fight of like, should I go over there? Or, you know, if I've made a good impression, maybe I should leave him alone and not push it. You know, on the other hand, you know, maybe he'll appreciate the fact, you know, I'm like, but I'll probably never see him again. And I'll wish I had always said something to him. And then like, I go through this whole fight in my head. And then I just was like, it was just like, I had to go for it. And I just was like, hey, if I did nothing else, I just wanted to tell him what I had to say, you know? So.
Well, in all fairness too, that really was before the days of selfies.
Yeah. I just wasn't, I don't know. I don't think I even thought about it. So
when you got the call, or whenever you got the call and they said, you know, to come on in for whatever it was, when they gave you your new name, what did you think of? Was it disappointing that you weren't going? Because you've since talked about the name change, and I actually got I actually was in our show with Regan Lydale, where you guys explained the whole name change thing, which brought a whole different perspective for me, at least. But going backwards to the question, when you got the new name of Eric St. Vaughn, was it a disappointment for you that you weren't going to be Tommy Ellis?
It wasn't a disappointment to not be Tommy Else. I was all about having a ring name or something. Although I'll be honest, so you got to remember that night I'm going out there. I'm doing the one show that I won the right to go do. I wasn't expecting to have a name at all. I didn't know what the hell I was even going to be doing at the show. They just told me when to show up. I didn't know I was cutting a promo with Darcy. I was joining her thing. I mean, I didn't know I was going to have for all I knew, they were going to bring me out to the middle of the ring and say, "Hey, everybody, this is Tommy Else. He won our thing and he's going to manage so-and-so tonight." And I would just hang around the outside of the curtain of the ring. I had no idea what the hell I was doing until I showed up there. And they brought me over at one point, me and Darcy, to sit down with Billy, because as you might remember, there were always the meetings going on all day, and match by match or spot by spot, everybody goes over to the couch and sits and has 10 minutes with Billy and talk about what he's looking for. So I wasn't expecting you going to get a name at all. But I will say that when he said the name, I really, my gut instinct was, really? Like, what is it? Eric Saint what? He had to say it a couple times. And then embarrassingly enough, at one point, and it was only because I was afraid of missing my cue to go out there, I forgot what the name was at a certain point. And I had to go back to him and say, "Okay, one more time. What's the name?" Eric St. Vaughn. Okay, all right. So then I'm writing it down or something. So then I just tried to stick by Darcy as much as I could, and I just was afraid I was going to miss my cue to go out there. And so now over time, obviously I ended up just shortening it down to Eric Saint or to ESV.
That was the next question.
Yeah.
Did that come about naturally, or was that you? Was that the crowd chanting? Was that
that was me? I started just kind of putting it out there just in social media posts, just kind of referring to myself as ESV. And I think enough people caught it that then you started hearing it at the shows, and you started, other people were calling me ESV. It's like Hunter Hearst Helmsley. It's like
RVD.
Yeah. And, and RVD, Y2J, it's like, but at this, I don't know. I just didn't feel like Eric St. Vaughn fit. I didn't know what the character was entirely. I knew I was supposed to be like a personal trainer to the stars, but Eric St. Vaughn still seemed a little hoity-toity or something for a guy who is even one who's, a personal trainer to the stars. So, but I mean, once I got, ESV going around, and then, at that point, it was no big deal. And then I was over it. I mean, I was happy to be Eric St. Vaughn. I mean, at a certain point, I mean, who gives a crap? It was like, I'm in this company and I'm getting to do all this awesome stuff, and people like Eric St. Vaughn. Well, then, then let's roll with it. So, but I did always in the back of my head have that, thing like, man, I've got an entire catalog of things you can do with the name Else, and it's just because I grew up with every opportunity they had when they first hear the name or whatever, they have to, the who else, the why else, the where else, the or else, everything, so
hence the podcast.
Right. But I was also willing to embrace that though, and take that and be like, look, I can make, 20 different t-shirts out of this, I mean, so it gives the commentators a lot of room to work with too, and things that they can, little quips they can throw in there with. Zach and C-Red were usually pretty good with, and Sarah Shockey too. And but yeah, so I never begrudged the Eric St. Vaughn name at all. But my initial reaction was just kind of like, all right.
Yeah, see, I always thought it was a missed
Whatever you say.
opportunity.
I mean, what am I going to do? I'm going to argue with Billy? Like, I don't know, man. You got anything else?
Well, I mean, I agree though. I did think it was a missed opportunity not to go with else. It just seemed perfect. To have a wrestling name like that,
Yeah.
it just seemed to make sense, but I digress. You mentioned T-shirts. That's a little bit farther down the line, but I'm going to bring it up anyway. We touched upon this a little bit in some other episodes. Did you receive, and you don't necessarily have to name names, but did you receive flack when you started producing, which I thought was a great idea. I love the marketing end. When you started producing Eric St. Vaughn magnets, T-shirts, 8x10s, etc.
No. In fact, well, I had one person, and you know who it is. I don't think we're sullying his name if we say it, or what do you think?
I don't think so. He said it out loud.
And I hold nothing against him for it, but yeah, Josephus Brody was he, and it was always hard to tell, like, if he was joking around or if he was serious, but this was one thing I think he was serious about. He had said at one show, like, I was debuting the new, like, I had everything. Like, this was the first show where, like, I had it was the He-Man based Eric St. Vaughn t-shirt, but I had the magnets and the buttons and the pins, and I had like all this stuff, and I'm like set up next to him at the table, and he was like, why do you have so much merchandise? He says, nobody knows who you are. I was like, and the thing is the reason I had been making, because I had stuff before that, but it wasn't anything major. Like, I think I had one shirt at that point, and maybe I was using some old bodybuilding photos as 8x10s. And but Jacques Barron, one of the owners, was the one who was telling me, he's like, get 8x10s, make some t-shirts, get, like, he was like, you gotta get a gimmick table together. I mean, like, he told me, he was like, get something going. So I went to work. I didn't know what I was supposed to do. So, everything that they said, you got to do this, you got to do that, I just went and I did it. So, but generally speaking, everybody liked it. I mean, like, even like all the, even the other wrestlers and stuff, and the people on the team, they'd stop by the table and be like, man, you got magnets, you got all sorts of stuff over here. It's they were into it. And a lot of them were asking, like, well, where'd you get these and how did you get them made and stuff. I remember Jay Bradley was one of the first guys who was like, all right, do they do shot glasses? And I was like, yeah, they do. And he was like, all right, give me the name and the number. I mean, so, like, I think generally most people liked seeing the effort being made. It wasn't to stroke my ego by any means, and it sure as hell wasn't for money. It was just that's what they said you do, and hey, and I didn't think anyone was going to buy anything either, because I agreed with Josephus. Nobody knew. I mean, by then I was maybe 4 or 5 shows in, but I still really hadn't done anything. I mean, I had kind of managed a few matches and stuff like that, cut a couple of, was out there for a few spots, said 2 words, and that was it. So I didn't go into it thinking like, well, I'm going to get mobbed and this is going to go off the table in a second. I just had it just to have it, and it was fun. And if anybody bought anything at all, it would be a thrill. If they spent 25 cents on a keychain, then hot damn, somebody cared enough to buy a keychain.
Well, from my perspective, I'll throw my 2 cents in. Wrestlers are notoriously bad at marketing themselves. You were one of the exceptions, I should say. I applauded your merchandise, and I applauded the fact that you had it. And the funny thing was, Josephus also said, well, heels don't have, heels don't sell merchandise, heels don't take pictures, which, of course, Ric Flair made a career out of that. But remember, by the end of it, Josephus had his own line of stuff that he was trying to sell.
Well, he had like an entire stand,
yes.
And he had some wild stuff too. I mean, he had some big framed pictures and stuff, and art, and
coffee
mugs, t-shirts. Yeah, I mean, honestly, if I had more money at the time, there were things there that I wanted. Like, I like some of the frame things that he had. I think a buddy of mine has one of the coffee mugs, and I actually wouldn't have minded having a Josephus coffee mug. I mean, I love the guy. We had a couple of scrapes with each other, but it was, but it was.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm not bad mouthing him on this level. You know, it's funny though, because he
but it's
took a
funny
note
that
from you.
yeah, he said that, but then eventually he ended up doing it. And then, and then I just never stopped, so like once Eric St. Vaughn became, running Body Magic and everything, well, then all the money and everything went into making Body Magic shirts and keychains and magnets and all that sort of stuff. And then having 8x10s of me and Ashton, and then getting 8x10s of, me and Ashton and Brady and Ray Lynn, and then me and Brady with the tag titles and that sort of stuff. And I agree, there's so many wrestlers that just don't. It's not so much. It's not about selling the stuff. I mean, on one hand, you do want to get shirts on people's backs, and that's what again why like you and I have talked about it before. We're never out for the money of selling T-shirts or anything like that. It's just nice, that there's people walking around wearing one of your shirts, or showing up at a show. Yeah, and you look out in the crowd, and there's a whole bunch of people wearing Body Magic shirts. And so there's that part of it. But it's also the fan interaction, because the fans, it gives the fans an excuse to want to, to come up and say hi and stuff like that. Not everybody buys something, but if you're at your table, they might want to come over and, have you sign something or take a picture with you or whatever. And even as a heel, now granted, I think we were somewhat lovable heels by the end of,
you're turning a little.
Yeah, it was, we didn't play by the rules, and we tried to be jerks, but me rapping to the ring with a shake weight kind of deflated the evilness of us a little bit. So, but it also opened up that room for us to be able to, like, when people would come up and come to the table, be able to just joke around, and and people got more endeared with us because of just getting to talk to us and meet us and stuff. So the guys who hide out in the back, I mean, I get it. I mean, there's some people that, like, for their persona and their character, it does work against them, and it does demystify, what they're trying to present when they come out to the ring in their character. I get it. It's like the Undertaker can't come out and be, shaking hands and kissing babies. And
but that's really a very slim.
It's a very small portion. It's but I think largely, yes, it's having a gimmick table is a good thing, but even more than that, promoting yourself, like you said, self-promotion is so important if you're an indie wrestler, because no one else is going to do it for you. You can't even count on the company to be, pushing you. So what you need to do is push the company and push yourself. You got to let people know, this is where I'm going to be, and this is the company I'm going to be wrestling with. And and a lot of people, one of the things we struggled with was, one of the easiest ways to get some good practice doing promos and get yourself out there and play your character was to just film a promo at home and send it on into the company, who would gladly put it up, because it's free advertising for them. It gives you a chance to, preface the match, with something, like give a little bit of story, because a lot of the times at indie shows, you're seeing one-off matches or something like that, or maybe it's the first match in a series, but you can, like when I got into a singles thing with Cody Jones, I mean, like, one of the first things I said to him is, like, you and I need to have like we should do a big back and forth online. And we did. I'd cut a promo and he'd cut one back, and I'd cut a promo and he'd cut one back. And we had this all the way up to the show. So if anyone was online paying any attention to it, there were people who had background on this and now were more invested in the match. So now, regardless of what we do in the ring, they're going to enjoy it that much more. And it's such a simple thing to do that not enough people out there, I think, take advantage of. And especially as time goes on, it's getting easier and easier to not only do it, but make it look really good too. So,
well, and by the same token, although it was a small number, there were some wrestlers there that would not do an interview with me.
Yeah.
And
that was another thing I never understood. I mean, as you know, I don't think I have ever said no to an interview with you or with anybody. I mean, It was like, again, it was like, if somebody cares enough or thinks that other people would want to see it enough that they're willing to sit down and do it, sure. And again, I knew, I learned very quickly that, you did it, but you got it out there and you spread it around, and people were seeing it, you know. So it was like, yeah, every show I was always down, you know, and then I was trying to help you get other interviews and stuff too.
You did, yeah.
You know, but I mean, you know, and then I've gotten to do interviews with like PL and, you know, some other, you know, podcasts and stuff like that. And yeah, I mean, I got asked to go speak at a school, which is a whole nother story, but that was cool. You know, I mean, I don't know. I think any chance you get to get yourself out there in front of people it's a win-win for everybody. So,
well, and the line is funny though, when he said, nobody knows you. That's part of the point. Nobody knows you. Get your shirts out there, then people start going, hey, oh, there's the you know, Eric St. Vaughn shirt. Then
right.
It all spreads, it all builds.
Well, and sometimes if somebody just even likes the shirt, they'll say, "What's that?" "Oh, that's Eric St. Vaughn." "Who's he?" "Oh, he's a wrestler in Resistance Pro." "Oh, okay." Well, so now this conversation's taking place just because they might have, like, you know, maybe they've got a He-Man thing like I do, and they saw that and they're like, "Oh, that's cool. It's kind of like He-Man. What's ESV?" You know. So
yeah,
but again, I can't claim to say that I knew that at the time either.
No.
I wasn't savvy enough at the time.
But you had the instinct to do it, which is
I was doing what I was told, and I was just, you know, I was just having fun with it. It was fun. Yeah. I had a gimmick table. I had a T-shirt. You know, I never had a T-shirt before.
You know? Hey, talking to
I'm up to my ass in T-shirts, but
all right, we'll move on. Was there ever a storyline pitched to you that you really objected?
Mm-hmm.
And how did you handle it?
There were two that I'll make mention of. The first one, you'll remember, at one point there was a lot of talk about potentially, and this is early on, this is like in the first 6 months, I'd say, where they were pitching the idea of Eric St. Vaughn being gay. If you recall this.
I do. Absolutely. I remember the conversations.
Yeah. My problem with it wasn't being a gay character. It was, my concern is that I didn't feel qualified to respectfully pull it off. I don't, you know, if I'm being honest, I don't have a lot of gay friends. You know, I don't really want to stereotype anybody. And it was just something that it's like, your wrestling character needs to be an extension of who you are so that you can speak with some intelligence. You know, like if you're cutting a promo, like if you're asking me to cut a promo as a personal trainer, well, I've got 15 years experience as a personal trainer. There's all sorts of terminology and things I can say that'll make it seem believable that I'm a personal trainer to the stars. I don't know anything about being gay. You know, I don't think, you know, I mean, so it's just like, I felt like it didn't, you know, have any legs. And I thought, this is just going to tank me. You know, I'm like, this is it, you know, people are going to be offended, or they're just, I didn't know how to play it. And I don't know. Now, that being said, I was very concerned about it because it did keep coming up in conversation. But at a certain point, I was being trained by Jay Bradley at the time, and I talked to him about it. He said he hadn't heard anything about any of that. And then shortly after that, the discussions kind of just faded out, and they just seemed to let it go. So I didn't really ever say anything. I think I said that I wasn't. I think I told Jock and Gabe, because Jock especially was real big on the idea. I think it was his idea. And for all I know, I also considered the option that this could have been something that was never going to happen, but he just was screwing with me, you know, which is very possible. But had that been the case, had he been legit about it, and some people were saying that he was, had he been legit about it, yeah, I think it would have been a bad move. But it never came to a point where I really had to like put my foot down or anything like that. And I think if it came down to it, I probably would have, even if I thought it was like, that's
well, you probably would have what?
I would have said, like, I'm not going to do that. You know,
Right.
I'm not going to go there with the character. And if they let me go at that point, then, you know, it was fun while it lasted. It just, at that point, I'm just going to go out and not only embarrass myself, but probably insult somebody out there too, you know? So
I mean, has there ever been a gay character in wrestling that portrayed them in a legit or a positive light that didn't somehow end up either being cringeworthy or a farce?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, like, even if you look back at, like, you know, when Billy and Chuck were doing their thing there, where it was like, you know, they weren't saying they were gay, but they were doing all of these things that were stereotypes of gay people, and it was tough to get into. You know, I mean, it was you know, the only good thing that ever came out of that was the wedding, or the commitment ceremony, or
Right.
whatever that it all led up to. That was, and the only reason that was great was because Eric Bischoff was in makeup as the priest, and that moment where he unveiled himself was the only good part of that entire thing. But it was uncomfortable because you knew these two guys were not really gay, and it did seem, if I was gay, I would have been a little offended by some of it, you know. Now, I do think, you know, and that's the other thing with it too, is like, if you look at, like, Rico, when former Las Vegas, Nevada police officer, JR could never not let you know. He loved that fact about him.
Yeah.
He's a former Las Vegas, Nevada police officer. Rico started out with Billy and Chuck and the gimmick and everything, and had sort of that flamboyant designer type of thing going and stuff. But then he inevitably went for it, you know, with, you know, the gear and the whole thing and stuff. And to some end, he was able to make it respectable, but it was still playing off of a lot of stereotypes. It's, you know, running up from behind on somebody and smacking them in the ass and things like that. And, you know, and the furthest it ever went was, is they just wanted, like, when Ashton and I got together, they wanted us to be a lot more like, you know, like me massaging him before the match and stuff like that, and being more touchy feely with each other, so that it was like, kind of like, you know, hinted that, you know, and that there might be something more going on with us, whatever. And I played that part. I did that stuff. I didn't think it was anything too directly, you know, it was, you know, it was something that I felt was loose enough that it wasn't gonna, you know, bug anybody. It would probably be amusing for most people. So, so the other, okay, so that was number one. And then the other one that I did not like, which honestly I regret not putting my foot down about, but at the time we were in a really tricky period with the company, and there were a lot of circumstances behind why they ended up going with this. But the way that Body Magic broke up, I did not like it at all. Was not a fan. It ended with me turning on Brady because Brady missed a couple of shows because he had other gigs, and I was pissed because we're the tag team champions and he's not there helping defend the title. So one show I'm on my own in a handicap match, the next show I've got Pondo sitting in with me, and the storyline was like I had enough. And then, so while we're defending our titles, after I've gone through, it makes no sense to me. Here I am complaining about how I want to keep these titles and everything, and he's jeopardizing it by, you know, not showing and everything. What do I do in the middle of the match? I smack him in the face and I walk out on the match, and I let Pondo and Shane Mercer win the titles. Why would I do that? It makes absolutely no sense. And me especially, why would I, you know, my faction, why am I going to break it up with nowhere to go? You know, it wasn't like I did something and got something out of it. All I did was lose. I gave up the title. I lost my partner. I lost my faction. Now, this was also the doorway into me going into being Tommy Else and getting into singles and everything. I didn't mind that we lost the titles. We had them for a long time at that point. And you know, you're going to lose the title eventually. It was just the way that it happened. And I also thought that we should have finished, if we were going to do that, then there should have been a blow off 3-match series or something like that. That was me versus Brady, to put a pin in Body Magic, you know? And then, because at the time, Brady was not coming around as much. And so if he was going to leave, then the best thing for us to do is to have our rivalry. And then, like, you know, we could have like a loser leaves our pro match or something like that. And then he takes off. And then at least I come out with something. And then I can, you know, go on and move on from there. And there was an end to the story. The ending to our story was just complete bullshit. I hated it. And I really wish I had said something, but at the same time, I don't think it would have mattered. And again, like, we didn't know if we'd even get Brady back for another show, let alone get, you know, a few matches out of him. So some of it is just, you know, me in an ideal situation, that's the way it would have worked. But there were circumstances that were beyond the control of anybody, you know, the promoters, everybody. I mean, it was just, some of it was just kind of, it was just what we had to do. But even within the confines of that, Eric St. Vaughn would not have gone up and smacked Brady in the face and walked out on that match. He had never, ever done anything like that, and neither did Tommy else. That was the only time in my entire run in that company that I ever did anything that was close to that. It made no sense. It was not who either of my characters ever were. So,
like you said, though, you gained nothing by doing that. You showed Brady like it did. It did not. You gained nothing. Why would you do that?
I cost him being a tag title champion.
But you cost yourself.
But I did it to myself too. So it was
it's like crashing a car to hurt your friend, you know? Like,
right. And it's not like we were like this unlikely tag team where it was easy to break it up, and, you know, then, but even in those situations, when they break them up, they usually pit them against each other, like Cesaro and Sheamus or something like that, you know. But we were a solid tag team unit, you know, and we had been in, you know, a broken down version of former faction. You know, it was kind of like DX kind of, you know, slowly came down to just being Triple H and Shawn Michaels. But it just made, there was no, it didn't do anything for Brady. It wasn't helping. It didn't make him look good. It didn't make, you know, me look good. It didn't, you know, so, and no matter what, in a match, both people, they have to look good in some respect, whether you looked good as being a heel or you looked good as being a face, or whatever the case was. It was a lose-lose situation for us. And then it also
for Pondo.
Well, exactly. I was just going to say, it also cheapens their victory, because these are two guys who by all rights should be able to beat us. You know, I mean, Mercer's insanely huge and ridiculously strong. So he's a real good guy to pit up against Brady, who's also, you know, a monster. And then you get me and Pondo. You know, it was like, it was a good matchup, and I think they deserved, if they were going to win the titles, they should have deserved to win them, you know, on their own, fair and square, and not because one of the other guys screwed the other dude, you know. So, and Pondo especially had almost had those tag titles so many times, and he had them and then had them stripped off by the next show. That guy had a really bad history with those tag titles. It would have been nice for that guy to just, he and Mercer to just win them, you know, fair and square.
Did you wrestle a woman? Did they ever want you to wrestle a woman? Would you ever wrestle a woman?
I wanted to wrestle a woman all the time. If you recall, I was dead serious about doing Erica St. Vaughn.
Well, that's a little different though. I mean,
okay. So, but regardless, so in our pro, I have wrestled women, but not in Resistance Pro. I teamed up with Paloma at a corporate event that we did, so I got to tag with one, but I never got to wrestle one. I would have wrestled any of them gladly. We had a really good roster of women wrestlers. I mean, it's a long list. You know, we had Thunder Kitty. I don't even want to get into it. I don't want to leave anyone out, but I mean, like, there was nobody I wouldn't have been happy to get in the ring and wrestle with. It never really made sense. There was really never, you know, an opportunity where it made sense for it to happen. So
yeah, but we are talking about there were plenty of things that didn't make sense.
That's true. That's true. Well, you know, I was lucky though, for as much weird things that took place storyline wise you know, or not weird, bizarre, I don't know what the word is, but um we were relatively untouched by most of it. You know, Body Magic and me in particular never really got any, you know, bizarre storyline stuff that, you know, I mean, it was pretty straightforward. You know, we didn't have any of the crazy stuff going on with us. Now we saw it going on with everyone else and some of their storylines, and you know, guys being made heel one day and face the next, and you know, back and forth and back and forth, and you know, guys getting into rivalries for a year that they don't need to be in, and you know, just all sorts of stuff. But we never had any of that. I think the most bizarre things we ever did, there were two things that would attribute to Body Magic. One was the dance off, wrap off, pose off. That was a little weird one, but that was, you know, that's been done. You know, that's a thing in wrestling and stuff. It wasn't bad. It's still a lot of people actually still love watching that clip of that. And then the other thing was, it wasn't me, but when Ashton, he was in Body Magic, but when Ashton had the evening gown and tuxedo match or whatever with Mickey Knuckles, and she stripped him down to a G-string, you know, I mean, but that was it. That's like the most bizarre things we ever did, and that those neither of those are that bad. So and it worked too. I mean, like I said, people liked the dance off, wrap off thing, and everybody thought it was hysterical when Ashton got stripped down to his G-string. I remember we were very concerned though that like that was not going to hold everything in because like we were really like backstage beforehand. We're like, you sure this is gonna, you know, there's kids there, there's kids in the audience, you know, you can't go, you know, flying out of this thing or anything. You know?
Try to keep it together.
Right. But yeah.
Did you, I know afterwards, after you left or after our pro ended, I know you wrestled elsewhere. Did you, during your time at our pro, did you seek to wrestle elsewhere? Did any other companies seek you to wrestle there?
So I wouldn't say other companies were necessarily looking for me, but I had other wrestlers who were working gigs who needed, you know, people at their show. So I had Jake O'Neill was going to be in a 3-on-3 match up in Wisconsin or something like that, and they needed a third guy, and they needed someone who was kind of like a bigger, you know, bodybuilder built type of guy for what they were going for. And so he had called me up and asked me if I would, you know, go and work the show with him. So I did that with him. Cody Jones needed a tag team partner down south at I can never remember the name of the promotion. But so I went down there. I tagged with him. So I got to work at some other places, and it was neat. I like seeing how other places ran and stuff. And you get in front of crowds that they don't know who I am. You know, I mean, you know, some of the people in like Southern Illinois, but like up in Wisconsin, you know, you're just, and even then I didn't play Eric St. Vaughn. I took those opportunities to try out being Tommy Else and you know, wear different gear and everything, because if I had come out to that crowd doing my usual gimmick and the rap and everything, you know, some people would have dug it for sure, but I think that it's not going to get the same kind of pop that the established audience that it's been made for would work. So, you know, I tried some different, you know, entrance themes, and you know, I tried, you know, just doing different stuff, and it was it was fun. I like it, and then, you know, and I've gotten to work at I don't know how many school shows and things like that, you know, not just with C-Red at the Southside Occupational Academy, but we did other ones too. Neil Armstrong and Fanger and, you know, that sort of
the
stuff.
Elephant Show.
There was the Elephant Show. That wasn't an our pro show. So yeah, took on BD Smooth at that one. But yeah, so yeah, I did, but I can't say that like promotions were reaching out to me either though. So which I was fine with. I mean, I was putting so much time and energy into Resistance Pro that part of the reason no one was looking for me was I wasn't putting myself out there at all. I mean, not to other companies or anything like that. I wasn't trying to get in and get their attention. I wasn't trying to get to know the promoters or anything. It was, between my work and just general life, getting through, the month of stuff that we would do to get ready for just one R Pro show was so much work for me on my end, at least. I mean, like, I got to drive up to Schaumburg. I got to pick up all the posters and flyers. I got to organize the street team. I got to find a day where we can all go out for 8 hours and go flyer and put in things like that. I got to, pick so-and-so up from the airport. I got to, get in touch with these guys and let them know what their matches are. I got to do the social media. It's like, there was no room for me to try to get on other shows. And, I had other, people saying, like, I remember, like, Marche at one point was telling me, he's like, like, I can talk to, a couple promoters and I'm sure I can get you on the show and stuff. And I was, I appreciated very much, but I just was like, I don't have the time. And, I mean, and it's not, I wouldn't want to just go and do a one-off somewhere, I mean, like, if I was going to, like, get involved with the company, I'd want to get all the way involved with it. I'd want to be, work my way up to being a regular and that sort of thing. But I was already there. I already had that where I was at, and I was very happy with it. So, and then after, in the post R Pro era, as far as working other places and wrestling and stuff, I've just, I'm 43 now. It's I would still love to work some shows, and I hope to do a few before I die, so that I can, like, the last match I had in R Pro, I didn't know was going to be my last match. You know what I mean? And so it's like, I'd like to kind of have, I'll never officially retire because, as you know, I don't believe in retiring in wrestling because, well, I've
So you
just
don't
seen
think the flip brick is finally done?
yeah, I've just seen too many people have their retirement match, and then, like, 3 months later, it's like, guess who's back? It's like, you weren't gone long enough for anyone to care, man. So, but anyway, but I still doing the shows at, C Red School, and, any, like, anything like that comes up. I mean, like, I'll jump on that in a second and still do it. But like I said, if I was going to wrestle, I would want to come back and be on it full time, and it's just right now, it's just not a good time. But, I've gotten to, get in the ring and practice with Bryce, from time to time. And I'm lucky that I have access to a ring and I can still get in there and, roll around. And, training with him in this last year was a big help for me when I went to do the Southside Occupational Academy. And, when I went and hit that match, I mean, it was a short match, but, I just mentally felt a lot better about it because I was more warmed up and boned up on, because otherwise, you go a whole year without, having a match, it's a lot of ring rust to go in there, but anyway, you got anything else?
Yeah, we've got a few more. You touched on it a little bit.
Okay.
So, you could determine how you want to answer this question. Hindsight, always, it's easy to look back and see things clearer. But
Right.
any regrets, anything that you would change if you could? I know you touched on it a little bit already.
Regrets. Yeah, it's I do have some regrets. One of which, so, we talk at some point in that series of podcasts about when Billy left the company and the turmoil that went on as it caused a rift in Resistance Pro. And you had basically Team Billy, and then you had Team Baron. And I tried very, very hard to stay neutral in that entire thing. I found that most of the people who were so Team Billy, so to speak, were very pushy and aggressive about telling me that I should leave Resistance Pro, that the barons are just terrible, evil people. And, but yet none of them would give me a single reason why. And they all told me the same thing. You got to talk to Billy. It's his story to tell. That actually, the night that Jake and I went up and did that show, Billy had invited all of us to a Smashing Pumpkins show in the city. And man, it was tough to not go to that and keep the gig up north, because I could have bailed on it. But I actually was just like, I felt like, no, Billy will respect the fact that I had an obligation and I stuck to it. And, you know, so, but as the story goes, as I've been told, I was not there, but after the show, he had pretty much everybody backstage, and they're all kind of hanging out and everything. And then this is like within a week or so, I think, of him bailing out of the company. And he explained, he told everybody, you know, you all deserve an explanation. And he got into this explanation that basically villainized or vilified the barons. And so all these people were there, and they had all heard this. And so the majority of those people, not all of them, but the majority of them, like, they all were Team Billy then. Okay. And they were all the ones giving me grief, saying that you shouldn't have anything to do with our pro anymore, you know. And I would ask, well, what did Billy say? Well, I can't talk about it. Well, you know, so I just didn't have a reason. And on the flip side of it, everybody who was on the Baron side didn't say anything. They didn't say you should or shouldn't go with anybody. You should or shouldn't do this. Nobody gave me any grief at all. It made them a lot more appealing. You know, I'm like, well, they're just respecting my space and letting me just, you know, like, I didn't understand why you had to take a side in this whole thing. You know, it's like, if Billy was done with the company, I mean, he had his reasons, then fine. You know, we knew Billy wasn't going to stay forever. He made it very clear. You know, we didn't know how long it would be, but, you know, but hey, we got 3 good years with him, you know, and in those 3 years, man, I had a blast. You know, all the things I got to do with that guy and get to know him the way that I did. It was one of the highlights of my life. That being said, one of my regrets was that in the course of that, I became so upset by the whole thing because, and like I made the analogy before, it was like your parents getting divorced and your brothers and sisters are taking sides and the family splitting up. And as you know, one of the things that we loved about our pro so much, and the reason that we invested so much of our time and energy into it, was because it was like a family. Yeah. We all felt very, very close and connected to each other. And for me to see this family violently tearing apart was just absolutely, completely screwing with my head emotionally and mentally, and it was not a good time for me. I started drinking. I mean, like, it was bad. It was bad. And in the course of that, over time, there became more venom from Team Baron towards Billy. And I was so tired of being beaten down by the people on Team Billy that I just kind of started sliding into that, you know. And again, I'm like, I'm slipping into drinking, and, you know, and I'm hearing that, you know, the things that they're saying about Billy, and now they're bringing up these things that he said or did that, you know, we hadn't heard about before. And so then I finally got to a point where I was like, yeah, fuck Billy. Yeah. You know, that's one of my biggest regrets. Billy did not deserve that, because here's what I believe. I've never thought that the people who were acting on behalf of Billy were doing so at his behest. It was not him saying, this is what you should be doing and you should be telling them to get out of there. I don't think, you know, I don't know anything for sure, but I just, knowing him in the capacity that I did not think that that was what was happening. And but what was frustrating though is that I don't think he knew what a bunch of bullies some of these people were being. And you were on the receiving end of this too. Yeah. You know, I mean, this wasn't just me. I mean, so
my website got anonymously attacked several times with vicious comments.
Yeah. And that was the type of stuff that was going on. And I mean, it was just, and people were online, and it was very public, and it was very bad. It was a terrible, terrible look for everybody involved, both sides.
No, you're right. Terrible look. Terrible
Yeah,
look for
I
everybody.
mean,
Yeah.
our pro, like, you know, like I said in the beginning, I mean, they never were pushing me towards anything, and even in the beginning, they weren't even really bad mouthing Billy or anything like that. But over time, the bad mouthing Billy got to be a bigger and bigger thing. I mean, to a very toxic level, and I got sucked into the bandwagon on the thing, and I will always regret it, because the time that I spent and the things that Billy did, everything that I ever did extracurricular with Billy, like I got to be a part of his um, creativity class that he taught at Madame Zuzu's. I got to play at Madame Zuzu's with him in the audience. I got to stand on stage at Ravinia and sing one of my favorite Zwan songs. I got to go to his birthday party. I got to go to his CD release party for Oceania. I got to go backstage at Riviera and meet Marilyn Manson and hang out for an hour. You know, I got to spend so many nights just intimately hanging out with him and a small group of people after hours at Madame Zuzu's, where we would talk. He'd play piano or something like that. I mean, it just, there's an endless list of incredible experiences that I just will treasure for always. And every one of those things, it was never once was it where I was coming to him and saying like, hey, can I come to your birthday, or can I do this, whatever. It was him coming to me and inviting me, like, he knew. I told him, I'm like, hey, I'm going to the Manson show. He's like, oh, I'm going to be there too. Want to go backstage and meet him? Yeah. It's like,
No.
so he was very, very nice, and he was very, very generous to me. And then I went out very publicly and badmouthed him, and then I never heard from him again. And I used to get texts from him once in a while, just saying like, hey, how you doing, and stuff like that. I remember once when my girlfriend and I, when I got dumped, basically, I was at Madame Zuzu's, and I was there, and not in my usual spirits. I was a little on the downside, and he could tell something was wrong. He's like, what's going on? I was like, well, so and so broke up with me the other day and stuff, and and he was like, well, come here. And so we just kind of like stepped aside off to the back of the place, and I told people a lot, back then, because Billy gets a lot of heat and press for being a jerk or something like that. But I was like, the guy's been nothing but nice to me, and honestly, I've never had a big brother, but that's what I would imagine it feels like, because even like age wise, it would work out, where he could be like a big brother. And when I was going through that breakup, he pulled me aside, he kind of talked to me a little bit and stuff. I mean, like, he, it was just, there's so many things. And I hate that after all the great experiences I had with him, and for all the wonderful things he did for me. I mean, he created my wrestling character. He's the one who came up with Body Magic and put me in the lead role in that. And I mean, there's so many things. And now the Barons have also done a lot of great things for me too. But so it's not one-sided, but I just wanted to be on the record though, that like, Billy did not deserve what I gave back to him. And it's been one of my biggest regrets for sure. My other regret was maybe not being a little more aware of how I was being used outside of the ring in the company, especially in the later days, like near the end of it. As I mean, it's tough for me to like get into like a laundry list of like the things that I did, because it was just like some things were just like a little thing here, a little thing there, like, but it was always like I was the go-to guy for anything. It was just like, we're at Wizard World, we're out of flyers, we ordered more, can you go to Schaumburg, pick them up, drive out to Rosemont, drop them off, we need them right now. And then I would drop whatever the hell I was doing, I'd jump in the car and I'd take off.
And that's probably about at least a 6 hour adventure.
It might not be that long, but it's gas, it's time, it's all that sort of stuff. And in the beginning, the Barons were very, very they showed a lot of gratitude and always were real big on, thank you, and you do such a great job, and you're you're this and that and whatever and stuff, and that goes a long way, and so but then as time went on, the responsibilities and the jobs kept getting increasingly more and more and more, and you saw this, but the thank yous all went away, and even paydays went away, and I didn't have a problem with that so much, because at a certain point, in the hopes that the company, which was on its heels financially, I said, look, don't, for the money I'm getting for working these shows, I'm like, just keep it and put it into the company and stuff, but then I was also the one handing out the envelopes at the end of the night to all the boys. Again, another one of my many jobs that I would do there. And and then when I was giving them out to like his kids who were tearing tickets at the door, and they're getting like $50 or something like that, and I've been there since 2 p.m. I've been to O'Hare and back. Now I'm going to drive somebody back up to their hotel. I've been, I've gone to the store. I've picked things up. I've been wrapping bats and barbed wire and all this sort of stuff, helping set up the ring, all this, everything. I don't get. And then again, the money would be totally superseded with a thank you. Good job. I mean, and even if it's not that night, if it's, I get it, you get busy, there's stuff going on, the next day you send a text or something, hey, thanks for taking care of the sound, thanks for doing this, whatever, and it just all went away. And during roughly the 6 years or whatever that Resistance Pro / the Resistance or whatever was, a lot of people told me that they felt like I was being taken advantage of. I didn't feel like it at the time, because I felt like I was getting, in return for all of the work I was doing, not only was I a part of the company in the ring, which was a huge thing for me, but again, it was a family, and I got to be a part of this family, and I got appreciated not just by the Barons and Billy, but by the other workers as well, because not everybody's from the area and can go out and do this stuff. So the fact that I'm helping promote the show that they're going to be in is benefiting them, and there were more than a few who recognized that and were grateful, and they would see like, man, you're always out putting out shows and putting out the flyers and all this stuff, and promoting the DVD or whatever the hell, it's and so one of my regrets is maybe not having evaluated the way it went, because the way it ended, it was a real crash and burn, because I had finally gotten to the point where I just I felt like I'm working my ass off. I'm getting absolutely nothing in return for it. I'm not even enjoying myself anymore. It's just not fun. And one of the rules in wrestling is, when it stops being fun, stop doing it, because it's just going to ruin it for you. And
I have a hard time even judging like the last, I don't put a time limit on it, like the last year and a half. I have a tough time judging pretty much anybody on that, because I think a lot of people had checked out. A lot of people were just going through the motions on that. I'm not absolving anybody of any blame in any actions, but I just think that at that point, I think we were all just kind of like sleepwalking through stuff at that point.
Yeah, I didn't know what lies ahead, and it's like, companies of any kind, but especially in wrestling, they go through high points and low points, and I figured, we're in a valley right now, but we'll pull out, but it just kept going down, and it just kept going down, and it was just getting to be depressing. And then I was frustrated with the way I was seen by the Barons in the ring as a performer, because they never watched any of the matches. I mean, like I could see when I was in a match, them talking to somebody else or not even be in the room. And I know that they don't ever watch any of the videos. They've made it very clear that they never watch any of the videos. And I watch the videos now of those matches, and you can see, and you can go on my YouTube page and see it for yourself. It's plain as day. There's Jacques standing in the background, but talking to somebody else, you know, having a beer and whatever while I'm working my match. And that's fine. But then to come out and then tell me like, well, you know, you're not really having great matches or anything. I was like, well, I'm like, you've never seen them, you know, I'm like, I can see you, you're not watching the match, you know, like, I like, where, like, what is it based on? The people I was working the matches were complaining, Cody Jones and Barry Wright, and, you know, it was like, I was getting, I felt like I was in a groove where I was starting to get better too. You know, it was like you know, once I went into singles and I started working singles matches, I really felt a lot more comfortable. Actually, I felt a lot more in control of, because I had always been in these, you know, triple threats and tag team matches and, you know, battle royals and all this sort of stuff. So there's like a million people and a million things to think about and everything. But now I was just in one-on-one situations with other competitors, and I could, I just enjoyed it a lot more. And I was getting better. And as you watch those matches, you see like I'm more comfortable in the ring. I'm, you know, we're learning to work the crowd better. I mean, like I really felt like, and that was what was so frustrating. Like if I thought I was the shits in the ring and they said, look, you know, you're not doing so hot, you know, it's like, I'd be like, well, yeah, you're right. You know, well, you know, hang back and, you know, train a little more or something like that. But I was feeling good about where everything was going on. They're like, I don't know. And it would be like, okay, I mean, if they watched it and it just wasn't up to whatever standard they had, then fine. But I don't believe that they ever watched any of the matches, because even after the match, I would ask them, I'd be like, what'd you think? And they would say, I didn't see it, I was busy, I was doing something else. And that's fine, like I said, but don't come and criticize me then, because you didn't even watch the damn thing. So anyway, so regrets, yeah, those would be the two, Billy and the you know, my lack of awareness of where things were going, and maybe it was just naivete and just being optimistic or hopeful that this would somehow turn around, but it just felt like it was getting darker and darker. So,
but you know, to put a bow on that, when we all got caught up in that, I worked for 17 years for a newspaper, and I worked my butt off thinking that, you know, I would work up, and I did go up to a certain level. I was head of my department, but then when it came time for the even the assistant GM job, I was told that, no, you don't, you know, you're not good enough. Like, why? I have the most seniority, I'm the head of the department, you know. So I mean, we all fall into that. But let's finish on a couple of really lighter notes. You are in charge now of creating a Body Magic faction. It could be any wrestler, anytime. You determine what components are in it. Go.
oh man, what pool of people am I pulling from?
Past, present, anywhere. It's just boom.
I mean, is it Body Magic, or is it just like a
Body Magic?
It's a Body Magic. Well, I don't know. I don't see Body Magic as anything other than the people who are in it. I mean, that's just, I don't know that I can answer that. I mean, like the only other person who would have made sense would have been having Darcy Dixon in there. Being, you know, because she was a women's champion, she was a bodybuilder, she fit the mold if we were going to bring in a girl. Now, I liked having Ray Lynn in there, and I wish that we had been able to keep her. I don't know why we didn't have her back regularly, but she was only with us for maybe 3 or 4 shows or something like that. But I liked having Ray Lynn. She worked her gimmick really well, and it fit in very well with Body Magic. So but had she not been an option, then, and I'm I don't know how to put it, but not one of Darcy's biggest fans, but you put all that aside, and just, there's still no denying that she would have fit very well into that sort of thing. So she's maybe the only other one I would have considered bringing into something like that. The only other, and then maybe, you know, I could see maybe like if you had put Nikki St. John in there somehow as a female model, and then played up that angle, we could have done that. But yeah, no, I mean, Body Magic in my eyes will always be Eric St. Vaughn, Ashton Vuitton, Brady Pierce, and Raylan. So
Johngy wouldn't have made it as a Body Magic reporter.
You could have been an affiliate or an associate. You would not have been a full-time member of the thing.
Thanks.
But we could have gotten you like a
Johngy Magic.
Well, I don't know. We could have found a function for you, I'm sure. But
all right, now we have perhaps the most important question.
Oh boy.
This is it. This is everything's led up to this question.
Okay.
What did you think of announcing with Johngy? I don't know who asked that question.
I loved it. I had a blast. Now, the problem is that we were dealing with just a real rough audio setup. So, like every show was, so the actual announcing with you was great. When we could get ourselves set up with a decent mic and some headphones and we could hear each other, it was a lot of fun. You and I we're on this show here together because I think that we do play well off of each other, and and we have natural banter and conversation. And one of the regrets I have of the timing of us finally getting to do some commentary is that at that point in the company, it was a new roster every show. I mean, there was like very few people who were regulars, where had we been doing it back in the day, I'm a walking encyclopedia of Resistance Pro history. So I can look at any wrestler and I know all their moves. I know what they're all called. I know what championships they've held. I know who they've been tag partners with. I know who their rivals are, so I could speak very intelligently about all of those people. But you're putting people in front of us that we don't know anyone, And so one of the things we had to do was you and I would run around during the day of the show and we'd have a list of like all the matches. And we have to go around and talk to all the people and find out like, what's your finisher? Where are you from? Is there anything, you want us to call out in particular and things like that? First of all, we have a bunch of names. We don't know who the hell anybody is. So we have no faces. It's not like their faces next to their name. So we're like, I don't even know where to start. I'm just walking up to people. What's your name? Oh, okay. All right. Yeah. Check that off the list. Okay. And then get the information. You and I had split it up or we just go together or whatever. And we try to get what we can. And then, so that made the job harder to do. But I think given what we had, we still did good. Now, if you remember the first show, I don't know if the first show we call commentary on or something. I don't know if we did it and it didn't work or they didn't bring the stuff that first time, but we actually had to go and record it after the fact. And we had to watch the video and record the commentary for like a 2.5 hour show or whatever it was, standing there doing this thing and stuff. And we had already seen the show. So it's tough to like have like those genuine reactions and everything to it and stuff. So it's like the logistics behind us doing it was kind of a shit show, and that made it tough. But the actual time where we were out there, I enjoyed it a lot. I thought we did a good job. It wasn't long before they decided that Gabe should be kind of like the full-time announce guy, and then for whatever reason you and I were going to split the show. So sometimes the first half of the show would be me and Gabe, and then at intermission you'd come in and finish it out, or vice versa. And then at a certain point it got to where I was getting so damn busy, taking care of the sound and doing all this other stuff, that the second half of the show would come up and it's my turn to call commentary. I'm like, I got too many things going on. Yeah. I can't do commentary. I'm like, just let John just finish out the show, So, but I did enjoy it. I would like to do it again. If I know you and I have considered the options of going, if another promotion was interested in having us, I mean, we would definitely be more than happy to give it a shot, if it worked out for us. But I had a good time. I enjoyed it a lot. I'm glad, and it's one of the things that I loved about the time in this whole experience is that I got to do so many different things, be a manager, be a wrestler, be a referee, and commentary was another thing on that list that I always wanted to get to do, and I got to do it a couple of times before, but to get to do it with you was particularly cool, though. So,
and of course, I've gone on record as saying that, on a personal note, I mean, there were a lot of you winning the tag team titles was one of my highlights, but that was really you. My two highlights were bringing the Bliss in and doing commentary with you. I had wanted to do commentary I wanted to do one match commentary. That was my goal for a story, and to end up calling matches with you, I had a blast doing it. So this is one of the few times that we'll actually be completely nice to each other.
Yeah. Well, it was a genuinely good time. I can't help but say, though, we were criticized. Apparently, it's out there.
But
and I have no problem saying it. But Jock Barron told me that, like, he's like, yeah, I think it was around the time that, I don't know, maybe it was after the fact, but he told me at some point that, like, they had people saying, they're like, yeah, they weren't big on the commentary on our shows or anything like that when you and I were doing them. I'll tell you something. I ran that social media account. I never saw anything come through there. I never saw anyone tweet about it. I never saw any post about it. I had never anyone come up to me and say something about it or tell me that someone else had said something about it. So I just don't buy it. I don't think, and I'll tell you something. I've heard the commentary on a lot of other independent shows, and I'm not saying we're great, but we ain't any worse than anyone else out there. So,
Well, and again, considering the obstacles that we had, and I'm not just saying all this to pat ourselves on the back, considering the obstacles we've had, I think we did a good job, but more importantly, we had fun. And that's all I really care about. If anybody thinks that we sucked, or if anybody wants to, put us down, I don't really care. We had fun doing it. And for me, it was one of the highlights.
And I've gone and you and I both have rewatched shows where we called the commentary on it, and I listened to it and I'm like, this is not bad. I'm like, this isn't, we're not JR and the King, but I mean, like, this isn't bad commentary, I'm like, we're, I don't know. But so
that wraps it up from my end, that you answered all the questions I had. And yeah.
Well, that's cool. Yeah, it was fun to talk about. It was good to talk about some of the stuff, and hopefully this was of some interest to some people out there. But
well, people ask the questions. So they might have asked them a couple of years ago, but they asked them.
Well, hey, better late than never. We get around to it eventually. All right, man. Well,
take us home,
John. If they wanted to, the people, the viewers, the listeners, the masses wanted to find you on social media, where could they find you, John?
Unlike Tommy, mine is really simple. It's one-shot service. Johngy's Beat. Just look for Johngy's Beat. You'll find me Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, website, the Johngy or Else podcast. Just look for Johngy's Beat. You'll find all of it. And you, go ahead and give your list of 12 different things.
We were having a really nice.
I could have ended on a love fest,
really
man.
nice,
I had to bring it back to reality.
Moment here. I even let you off the hook on your socials, and then you gotta dig in. I don't have 12. All right. I'm on the gram at Tommy_else. I'm on the Twit at Tommy_else. You can find me on the tube if you search Tommy Else, and you can find this show, the Johngy or Else podcast, also on the tube.
What about the cast? Can you find it on the cast, or is it the pods?
Oh, well, and we're on Spotify too. We're on the spot. So, but so you're catching us one place or the other. Wherever you're watching or listening, the link to the other is available. If I have anything to say about it, John is not interested in sharing the links in the descriptions. So
I do share. Now we're back to the lies.
Well, with that being said, John, I'm gonna let you take this one and take us home, since you mediated this show.
For the Johngy podcast, I, of course, have been Johngy, joined as always by who else but Tommy Ellis. This has been the Johngy podcast. Thank you for listening.